Hi guys, I wanted to make this video about our week 6 discussion board because there's a lot of really great texts in here that I wanted to talk a little bit about with you guys. I read through everybody's discussion boards and I think you are all really understanding what's going on in the text, but I wanted to offer some maybe alternative perspectives here, just really on one reading. So, well, maybe on a couple. So we have this text, The Chrysanthemums by John Steinbeck, and I wanted to start here because you guys, I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I like to interpret a lot of texts with feminist and Freudian readings. So women and sexuality basically is what I'm mostly interested in. And I wanted to offer an alternative perspective on the Chrysanthemums. You guys are touching on some really interesting ideas here, and I think that they closely relate to what I think about this text, but not getting right up to it. That's not to say that my interpretation is correct, because who am I? I don't know. But I think that maybe there was, I don't know, maybe there's someone out there that wanted to interpret it this way, but didn't necessarily feel as if you could. So I think that, like, if I'm reading Josie's response here, I think that you kind of are getting close to it. Josie, you say that the Chrysanthemums represent Eliza, the main character. This is noticeable as they share similar qualities, such as being lovely and strong. They also live in similar ways. Eliza has a nice and tidy house, and the Chrysanthemums have a very specific way in surviving and being cared for. One can also notice this symbolism in the way Eliza acts. When the traveler questions the flowers, the irritation and resistance melted from Eliza's face. She acts as if she had been noticed rather than the flower itself. Then at the end of the story, when she notices that the traveler throws the flowers aside, she whispers to herself sadly. In this moment, she feels rejected, just as the flowers were. This part of the story also represents not only how Eliza was rejected, but also how society rejects women. And I think that this is really interesting because I want to go one step further. I want to say that the flowers represent her sexuality, and it's as if it's almost as if she's, like, in a sense cheated on her husband, because in the story she is doing what a dutiful wife does, right? Like tending to her garden, making a happy home, and her husband is just kind of off in the distance, doing man stuff, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then this other man comes and gives her some attention, which really gets her excited. And I think that it's interesting the way that Steinbeck describes the proximity between the man and Eliza. On the bottom of 1048, says the man leaned further over the fence, and then Eliza, they're talking about the flowers, and she's just getting more and more excited talking about these flowers, and Eliza's eyes grew alert and eager. Then on 1049, we have Eliza inviting this man into her yard, and Steinbeck writes, while the man came through the picket gate, Eliza ran excitedly along the geranium-bordered path to the back of the house, and she returned carrying a big red flower pot. The gloves were forgotten now. She kneeled on the ground by the starting bed and dug up the sandy soil with her fingers and scooped it into the bright new flower pot. Then she picked up the little pile of shoots she had prepared. With her strong fingers, she pressed them into the sand and tamped around them with her knuckles. The man stood over her. I'll tell you what to do, she said. You remember, so you can tell the lady. And then she kind of goes on and talks a little bit about it, but we have this invitation to enter this sacred space where Eliza keeps her flower, y'all. Okay, I feel like that's representative of her virginity. I mean, it's not probably her virginity because she's married, but I think that it's her body. I think that this garden represents her body in a sense, and she's invited this man into that body. And whether this is a metaphorical thing or, maybe not. I mean, it probably is, but she gives him her flower. And so that's kind of, I think, why at the end she feels so disappointed, because she realizes that what she gave to this man who is not her husband has been tossed aside. And I think that that's why the ending seems kind of so jarring, where her emotions seem to kind of go all over the place, where she's excited to go on a date with her husband and she's kind of like feeling girly again and giddy again but also a little bit embarrassed because she gave this man her flower. And then she feels upset because her flower, like this flower pot, was thrown on the side. So I think that it's more than just disappointment because she realized that the guy didn't care so much about what she had to say. I mean, I think that Steinbeck is talking about women keeping things sacred to themselves, and I think he is talking about sex here. You can definitely argue with me if you want to, but I think like Josie's example here is legitimate, but it's just a little bit away from, and most of the comments here reflect this idea too, but I think it's just a little bit further away from the Freudian reading that I want to talk about. But again, I mean, y'all have great ideas. I'm definitely not trying to say that you are wrong, because you're not. So yeah, like, why is she sad at the end of the story? I don't know. I mean, I think we can look at this text in a number of ways. What was I saying? So I feel like maybe he's arguing in a possibly very sexist kind of way that women should not give away their flowers to just any old man because this is how they're going to feel if they do. And I think it's interesting, especially if you juxtapose this text with Kate Chopin's The Storm, which was possibly certainly also about adultery, if you want to call this one about adultery, where the ending was no big deal. And here the ending is essentially no big deal, but also the main character is left feeling like a little bit of guilt and a little bit of sadness and a little bit of uncomfortableness. And so I think that our author isn't giving her as much freedom as Kate Chopin was giving her character. So things to think about. Okay, I'm going to pause this and open up the next discussion board. Okay, so I found a question. All of the questions that you guys are asking are awesome. Matt asked about the trains, and someone else asked about the baggage and all of the stickers, and really, I think Megan, was it you? Somebody asked about the belly, or someone asked about the hills. Oh, Kashan asked about the hills. And I think that all of these questions are so valid. You guys definitely hit the nail on the head. Yes, this text is about the decision of whether or not to get an abortion. But what I thought was really interesting is Madeline's question, why would Hemingway choose to only see the girl and the boy, or the American, which is really what he calls a man. But I think what's interesting is that Hemingway is notorious for not being able to write female characters, and giving his female characters less importance, less of a say, less autonomy, I think, than his male characters. And someone else wrote about that. I'm probably not going to be able to find it off the top of my head, but maybe it's here. Yeah, you kind of got it right here. I think that Hemingway chose to refer to the male protagonist as the man and the female protagonist as the girl in order to establish the American's dominance. If he had chosen to say the man and the woman, they would have been equal, but he doesn't, right? He shows the girls being more submissive. And I think that that's a Hemingway-ism. That is something that Hemingway does. He doesn't write a lot of female characters, and when he does, he has a hard time identifying with female characters. I think that somewhere in the world there's a recording of Hemingway saying something like, and definitely research me on this because I don't quote this until you get proof, but Hemingway saying something like, nope, you know what? It's not Hemingway. I think it's Sean Connery. Just kidding. Never mind. I'm not even going to tell you. But I think Hemingway had issues with women, and I think that comes out in his writing. And so if you read any other Hemingway novels, Hemingway texts, most of his characters are men doing very manly things. And I think that also kind of is just part of his writing style. I really like this question too, that Josh asked and answered. Although Hemingway never directly states the conflict between the man and the woman, how is the symbolism of white elephants relating to the story's main conflict? More specifically, how does a white elephant relate to how the man feels about the potential outcome, this possible abortion? And you responded, Josh, by also saying that you did some research on white elephants. Kings in Thailand would present a troublesome person with a white elephant they must take care of. Although it's a gift, the white elephant is a burden. And so I wonder if, this speaks to the idea that this baby would be a burden, but also a gift. And so there's not necessarily a total negative outcome, and not a total positive outcome, but certainly things are changing. And I think that that's absolutely why Hemingway staged this in a train station. So you guys have really, I think, figured this text out, and I think y'all have done a really good job with that. Okay, and then the last text that I really want to talk about in this video is A Rose for Emily. So we've got some William Faulkner here. I think this is a great short story. Again, I think he has really awesome novels. But Anna, you asked a question that I'm really interested in talking a little bit more about. And you asked, what do you think the strand of iron gray hair symbolizes in the last sentence of A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner? I think that there's a lot of questions here about what happened with Emily and Homer, and did she poison him? Did she not poison him? I certainly think that, Taylor agrees down here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Emily poisoned him. And probably earlier in life. And what's really interesting is this hair, right? The fact that the hair is iron gray means that Emily hasn't been dead for that long. Homer probably has, but Emily hasn't, because her hair has been able to gray. So I really want you guys to get a good solid picture of what's going on at the end or throughout, really, A Rose for Emily. She's got this dead guy in her bed, and she is sleeping next to him every single night. Now, some critics have argued, which I don't really necessarily find any proof for within the text, but you guys can try to look for it, that she's, there's an element of necrophilia. Maybe I'm not clear on the definition of that. But I don't necessarily think that's what's going on here. But it's weird. So she is definitely sleeping next to his dead body, at least for a little while. And they didn't die together. There's nothing like Romeo and Juliet happening here where they both died at the same time. Someone else asked the question. Did someone ask this question? I'm pretty sure that what's the significance of, I think Ashton asked this question. I can't remember. What's the significance? Yes, Ashton, you did. What is the significance of the title of Rose for Emily, which has nothing to do with roses? This is a really good question. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, and I wish that I did, and I'm really curious if anybody has an answer. Can you tell me? What do you think about that? Because I think it's really interesting. Why do we give people roses? We give people roses for a number of occasions. Valentine's Day, do we give people roses for funerals? I don't know. I haven't really been to a funeral, I don't think. And we use roses to symbolize all sorts of things, and depending on the color of the rose, it can symbolize things. And so is this a red rose for Emily? I don't know. There are so many things to think about. And who's giving Emily this rose? Is it Homer? Is it this collective we who is the speaker, or excuse me, the narrator of this short story, which is the townspeople? I don't know what's up with this rose. So if anybody has the answer for me, please email me and let me know. Okay, so I think that I know that there are 3 other texts to talk about, but Winter Dreams and The Wasteland seemed a lot less popular. If anybody wants to chat about The Wasteland, feel free to email me. We can talk more about it. I think there are some there's a ton of references within The Wasteland that you really have to kind of read with your thesaurus or your encyclopedia open. Everybody wanted to talk about Robert Frost's Nothing Gold Can Stay. I think you guys said a lot of what there is to say about it. There are definitely other texts by Robert Frost that I would encourage you to read. I love Nothing Gold Can Stay, but yeah, you guys talked a lot about it. Somebody asked a question about, like, what if you read it backwards? Would it have the same effect? I love that question. I thought it was really effective. Somebody answered, about gold not being able to tarnish, and just sort of elaborating on that. That was great. So you guys are doing an awesome job. I'm trying to respond more to your discussion boards and things like that. So keep on the lookout for another video with week 7 stuff on, like, Howl and Fear and Loathing and On the Road, stuff like that. Okay, email me if you need me, and I hope you guys have a really good week.